Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Bandits Show. Joined by Luke and Chris yet again to cap off the top 40 QBs and find out who's got that coveted number one spot in the NFL. Let's jump over to the list. You see, we've got everything that's already been revealed up on the screen for you, and 10 through 6 has already been unveiled. That would be my bad, but feel free to open the floor, Luke and Chris.
Yeah, so I've got Dak Prescott, number 10. I'm a bit higher on him than Luke is, but I think what he's sort of done over the past couple of years in Dallas, he's sort of proven himself as one of the better quarterbacks in the league. And he does things for that team that other quarterbacks can't do. So when they're inside 15, 20 yards from the goal line, that he can take that ball and run it in. So he adds like another dimension to the game that not all other quarterbacks can do. He's got a bit of work that he needs to do with regards to his throwing. He's probably not a top 10 thrower in the league, but I think everything else that he probably gives to the team, like his leadership, brings the whole team together. And it could be a year where it really does come together for him with this cast that he's got around him. Like, he's very fortunate to have probably the best receiving core now in the league. He's got a top 5 offensive line in the league, and he's got a top running back in the league. Don't know if he's quite a top 5 anymore, but like for me, he's not. But he is one of the top 10 best running backs probably in Zeke. So he's always had a really good cast around him, and potentially that makes him sometimes look a little bit better than he actually is. So I'm not like willing to put him any higher than that. But I think top 10 for Prescott is big, really. I don't really see him ever really elevating himself into like top 5 sort of status like QBs. I think this is sort of like where he sort of peaks out at around that sort of top 10 range. And it could potentially be a big year for him, knowing that he's on that franchise tag and he could be the next quarterback to get that big deal.
Yeah, this is now he's got to prove himself that he's worth that money that he wants.
He's done it twice, hasn't he? Now he's backed himself against the franchise tag. But I do like him. I agree with Chris that he probably does sort of top out at maybe like 10, maybe slightly higher. I don't think he's really got the throwing ability to ever get into that top 5. But yeah, he's a solid quarterback, and I think Dallas would be crazy not to sign him long term.
Fantastic leader. You do see there's a lot of clips, and he's just, or like every press conference he does, he's always talking we, and then he wants to talk the next game, and he's never focused on individuals.
Yeah, he was like that even when he came in. He came in a little bit older than some rookies, but no, he sort of took the team on from the moment he was there, and like you say, he's had a good supporting cast around him ever since he's been in the league. But I think he is a top quarterback.
Yeah, definitely. I'm probably more on the side of Luke, where I've put him a bit lower, but so you can always prove me wrong this year and maybe get that Patrick Mahomes money.
I mean, in terms of my list and Prescott, I think there's definite movement, because I do think, looking at my list, you've got Big Ben, Rivers, Brady, potentially Breeze, who are all either going to retire in the next couple of years and/or have a down year. So I could definitely see, if we did this again next year, Prescott in that top 10.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, on the other side, you've got a different.
Yeah, I've got Matt Stafford in at 10. I feel like he is quite underrated. I even was sort of mulling over talking about him the other week when we did the overrated, underrated players. I think he can make all the throws, and I think if you put him in an offense like the Chiefs' offense, or you give him better, I wouldn't say weapons, because I think he has got good receivers and he always has had good receivers, but I just don't think he's ever really had a great OC. I don't think he's ever been on really a very good Lions team. But I think if he was, I think you could definitely see Matt Stafford in that top 5. I think he is that good, and I think he can make all the throws.
Yeah, I think there's a reason why he was like the number one overall pick all those years ago is because of the talent that he does have, and like you said, Luke, he's got good receivers around him now. I wouldn't say he's got like great receivers around him. He's always had good receivers. The only really great receiver he's ever had was Megatron. But when he had him, he didn't have like anyone else with him.
No, it was him, and that was it.
It was just Calvin Johnson. And then, like, ever since then, they've had, like, good number twos. I mean, Galladay's a really good receiver. I don't know if you'd really say he's an out-and-out number one receiver. He's a very good number two. I think he reminds me a little bit like Juju in that sort of sense, where they're both, like, really good number twos. They're maybe not quite a number one. Like, I do really like Galladay, and I like Marvin Jones as well. But one of the things that he's never really had is a running game.
Yeah.
So it is sort of like defenses they sort of know that the pass is coming, and like you said, you put him on a team where he's got like a good OC and potentially a bit of a better offensive line around him. You could see like Patrick Mahomes type numbers. I'm not saying he's as good as Patrick Mahomes, obviously, but you could see him doing like big things if he was in a team where potentially it was a bit more offensive minded and the team around him was better as well.
He's been a little bit wasted, really. You always sort of see them players who you sort of look back in after the career and you think, what a talented player who's just never been given the opportunity to really grow within a team. And I hope Detroit do sort of win with him and he has successful years with them. I know they've had relative success, but they've never gone far in the playoffs with him. But it would be nice to see him have some success later into his career.
He could be one of them where if Detroit don't really have a good year again this year, where they potentially look to reset and go quarterback route, or look to get rid of Stafford.
Yeah, and just rebuild without the huge money.
He ends up going to another team and sort of has a resurgence at the end of his career. Like he's not a young quarterback.
He went to the same.
Yeah, like he's not a young quarterback, but he's got years left in him. Potentially a little bit like Manning did with the Broncos, where he went to the Broncos for like one last run. Yeah. And they were like in that period where they had him, they were so competitive, and they were obviously won a Super Bowl and came close on other years as well.
I think Stafford's a bit of a stat padder. I think it's proven, but that might obviously because he's never had the run game. It might be that his numbers look a bit higher than they probably would be. I don't think I see much out of him where I'd keep him up that high. I do like him. He does have some good arm angles, and he is a good player. Not sure I'd rate him as highly as you two, but not my list. So,
well, I seen a clip actually today on I think it was the check down on Instagram. I'll send it over to you, Ben, because just watch that and.
Oh, is it where there's about 4 defenders around him and he fits
and he just absolutely rifles it through like Ivan even. You just watch it. There aren't many other people who can make that throw.
Probably just the top 5, top 6 players on our list that can. And that's like we say, if he's on a better team, then we're not talking about Matt Stafford in this section. I think we're both talking about him in them top 5 groupings.
I don't know. I'm still a bit weird on him. Maybe if he, maybe we'll see in the next few years if he does get that better team. I might.
Yeah, well, speaking of stat padding, we've got number 9 on my list, which is Drew Brees. So might as well.
That is Mr. Stat padding there.
Yeah, I mean, there's your stat padder for you. I think when people around this sort of level between the 6 to 10 range is quite fair for Drew Brees now. I think when people say he's top 5 quarterback still, I think they need to go back and actually watch the games and just watch that playoff game from last year where like Sean Payton he was putting Taysom Hill in more and more and more in that game because Drew Brees isn't able to make those down the field throws. He can't make those 30, 40 yard throws, pushing the ball down the field anymore. He's very good at getting the ball out very quick, and he's got one of the best receivers in the NFL in Michael Thomas, who that's perfect for, and he's got one of the best offensive minds in the game in Sean Payton. So it's been perfect for Drew Brees, and he's been one of the best quarterbacks. He's one of the best quarterbacks of all time. But for me right now, he's not a top 5 quarterback anymore. I think this could be his last year in the NFL, and it's written for him to go on and to win the Super Bowl this year. And to be honest with you, I quite like it for him because he probably deserves more than one Super Bowl. But I think if they were to win the Super Bowl this year, I don't think it would be because of Drew Brees. I think it'd be because of the team around him. But he's still got to execute it, and he's one of the smartest minds in the game. And like I said, he's got that quick release, and that's perfect for the offense that he's in at the minute.
Yeah, he's a safe type of quarterback, Drew Brees. I think he's always been very sort of surgical, and he does what needs to be done. He's got obviously probably the best OC over maybe the last 20 years. Maybe I'm sort of giving him a few extra. I don't know exactly when Sean Payton came into the league off the top of my head, but I think over a long period, Sean Payton has been the best. Like we say, he's probably got the best receiver in football. Very good running game. A couple of other decent receivers to go along with that. A very good line. I think sometimes the line's a little bit underrated. I think they're seen as having a good few players, but I think a lot of near all 5 of them are good. I know they got rid of Larry Walford and they drafted Cesar Ruiz, but I think that's just their way of resetting again and just adding some depth to that line, ready to go for another run. I'm obviously a little bit higher. I've got Brees in at 6, but I do agree with a lot of Chris's points. He's not what he used to be. He's slowing down as he gets older, but he's definitely capable of being on a Saints Super Bowl winning side. I agree it's not going to be all Brees, but I definitely can see him going to the Super Bowl with it.
But I honestly think that he's been sort of unlucky these past few years in his playoff games. Obviously the injury last year as well. But he's been around this good team, and I think this is it. Like, people say, oh, it's his last chance because he's retiring, but this is probably his last chance because they won't have the cap space to pay everyone who's on that roster.
I mean, he signed a 2-year deal, didn't he? So if he wins a Super Bowl this year, I think that'll be him done. But he's not going to do more than 2 years, and he's picking up injuries a lot more frequently as well.
Yeah, clearly he's not what he was when he won his first Super Bowl, but he still makes some exceptional plays, and can't argue that he still fits today's game really well.
Yeah. Next up at 9, I've got Tom Brady, obviously a little bit higher than what Chris had him. I think he's still sort of worthy of being a top 10 quarterback. He didn't have the greatest year last year with New England, but I don't think that was all on him. When you actually look at the receivers and the sort of offensive weapons he has, I don't think they were fantastic. And they still made it to the playoffs. They still won that division again. I'm very interested to see how this season goes at Tampa. There'll be a lot of question marks if Brady and Bruce Arians can create an offense that suits them both and the receivers they have along with it. I'm not sold. I don't think they're going to be fantastic this year, but that doesn't take away from the fact that I still think Brady is a top 10 quarterback. I mean, he still has that sort of clutch factor where he's probably, outside of maybe Mahomes, maybe Russell Wilson, I don't think there's another quarterback I'd take, possibly Aaron Rodgers, but he's had a couple of down years, that you'd take in a 2-minute drill. He is just so surgical and he knows how to run it. He's just so good at it, and he's been doing it for 20 years.
I think it's really weird to talk about this, but like the fact that Brady is so far into his career, but this could be finally sort of his proving year. The fact that he can finally prove that it wasn't the system, it was Brady that made the offense work, or could flip the other way and we could all be saying, yeah, he won 6 Super Bowls, but it was the coach that did it.
Yeah, I think that's what makes it so interesting this year, and so interesting the fact that he's left and he's on a different team, that we finally get to find out, like, it's a shame that it never happened earlier, but at the same time, if it did happen earlier, then you wouldn't have that dynasty that, I don't think so. I think they sort of go hand in hand a little bit. But like, I do think it is more the coach and the system than it was the quarterback. Like, because Belichick proved that he could win with other quarterbacks when Brady wasn't, when he was either injured or when he was suspended. The Patriots still managed to win games. Whether they won Super Bowls is a different matter. But I think you could, like I said the other week, that I think you could put other quarterbacks on those Patriots teams and they'd still win Super Bowls. They might not win 6, but they'd still win. But there's other quarterbacks that potentially you could put on that list, not on that list, on that team, and they would win 6 Super Bowls, maybe more. Like, so it's, like I say, it's just an interesting one. They do go hand in hand, but we might finally get the answer this year. But it's just a shame that it's come when he's like 40 years old.
Yeah, he's not what he used to be. I think, because obviously what you're saying is, because Belichick actually made the playoffs in 2008 when he had Matt Castle at quarterback. You know, like, it's definitely possible. And even Jimmy Garoppolo got a massive deal off just playing 4 or 5 games in that system.
Exactly, like Brissett went to Indianapolis, ended up then becoming the starter there. So it's like they just seem like they're just a bit of a machine down in New England. So I've got Stafford at 8. Obviously, I've already spoke about him. So then Matt Ryan, I've got at 7. Matty Ice. I mean, again, he's not like a clutch. I don't think you'd put him in the sense of like a clutch quarterback, like Luke just said, like with the Bradys and the Mahomeses and the Rodgerses. But he's calm and he's cool under pressure. I mean, yeah, like the Falcons blew a 28-3 lead in the Super Bowl, but I mean, he's not out there playing corner for the Falcons, is he? Like, he's shown year after year after year how consistent he is, and I suppose it does help that he's got Julio Jones there. But he's a good quarterback. He makes the right decisions. He can push the ball down the field. He can get it out quick. He just sort of does everything that you'd want, and he can move around in the pocket and he can buy time. He's not going to take off and run for 20 yards, but he can pick up a few yards if needed be. But like I said, like he's able to move around in the pocket. I think that's quite an underrated part of his game, that he doesn't just sit there and wait to be sacked. He will move around and sort of extend the play, which when you've got receivers like Julio Jones, becomes absolutely massive. I think you could see in the next couple of years Ryan falls further down these sort of lists, but I think at the moment he's just a very good NFL quarterback who deserves to be in a top 10.
I mean, it's weird because you won't put him in that sort of that clutch category, but he is a clutch quarterback because obviously that's where the name comes from, and he has led so many game-winning drives that he does sort of deserve to be in that. I mean, he is. I'm just looking it up, and he is in the 4th spot of most game-winning drives with 38. He's just 4 spots under Roethlisberger, who's down at 12.
That's what I mean. I think he goes sort of unnoticed a little bit because he's not like flashy. He's not a flashy quarterback. He just sort of does what's asked of him, and he's led that. Like, he went into that team as well, like after the whole Michael Vick scandal, and it was like probably not an easy situation to go into. but for the past however many years, he's made them relevant. And obviously, he had his MVP year, which was more down to like Kyle Shanahan being the OC, but he still had to execute it. And you can see that obviously Kyle Shanahan's gone on to other places and done things with other quarterbacks, but he's never had the success that he had with Matt Ryan. I think that's because Matt Ryan's probably the most talented quarterback that he's had.
Yeah, I'd agree. I mean, he does get. He is probably a little bit underrated. He's maybe not what I feel maybe Matt Stafford level underrated, but he does go under the radar and he doesn't get the same love that some of the top quarterbacks get because he doesn't make flashy throws all the time. But he's, like you said, he's still a quarterback that won the MVP. And yeah, he did it with Kyle Shanahan, and Kyle Shanahan's unbelievable OC in the league. But he was still making those plays. He was still converting third downs. He was still scoring touchdowns. And I do think he gets, like I say, I do think he is a little bit underrated. He is getting towards the end of his career, and the Falcons look like they're struggling a bit at the minute, and they're in a tough division, and maybe he won't get another shot at the Super Bowl, which would be a shame that his only Super Bowl appearance is the most famous come from behind win. Unfortunately, not for him, for the other team. But yeah, I mean, if they can reset, they've got, like I said, we both think top 8 quarterback. So I don't think many people would argue with that.
No, I don't think you can. I think he's fantastic, and I think the reason he's been flying under the radar is that the Falcons haven't really regained that momentum since the Super Bowl loss.
No, they've never been able to repeat it. Unfortunately, a lot of it was Kyle Shanahan and his ability to run the ball and his ability to play design. But they've still got an MVP quarterback if they can find the right OC. Next up, I've got Carson Wentz. Now, I'm going to sort of try and keep it a bit short so Chris can pour over this for as long as he wants. But I think Carson Wentz is another one. I think if he doesn't have the injury problems he's had for the last couple of years, for me, he'd be above Breeze and probably would be in my top 5. But unfortunately, he just keeps getting these injuries. Every year it feels like he gets an odd different injury and he's out for a couple of games or he misses the playoffs. That year that the Eagles went to the Super Bowl, he was playing at such a high level. He was the MVP that year for me, had he not been injured. He's got it all. Yeah, I do honestly think he has every attribute to be a top quarterback on par with the guys we have at the top of our list. And I think, hoping he can have a couple of injury-free years, he will sort of solidify himself in that top 5.
Right, so are we ready? I'll just buckle yourself in. I'll start.
I'll sit back and listen.
Yeah, so I agree with everything Luke just said there. He's the thing is with Carson Wentz is when you talk about him, people talk about the injuries, and for me, I'm not really concerned about it because last year he showed that he could stay healthy. His injury last year was him getting concussed on a dirty hit to the back of the head. So, like, it's one of them, isn't it? Like, you just, it's not, his body's not broke down there. It's just, he's been concussed. It's just unfortunate that it happened in a playoff game in like, the first quarter. But everything else about his game, like, just the way he sort of put that team on his back last year with the receivers that he had around him, a bunch of nobody playoff game. They'd have beat the Seahawks because they kept it close with Josh McCown at QB. So I think they'd have won that, and then obviously, like, I'm not saying they'd have gone on to like the Super Bowl or anything, because I think the 49ers last year were a much better team. They'd have been able to stop the Eagles, but he'd have been able to like silence a lot of the critics there. And I think when people look at Wentz and they had the whole thing of like, oh, should they have kept Foles? That's absolutely ridiculous, because Nick Foles is not the quarterback that Carson Wentz is. As much as Nick Foles had that historic run to the Super Bowl, it was the team around him that galvanised and managed to win the Eagles that Super Bowl. It wasn't just Nick Foles that won the Eagles the Super Bowl. And that year, like Luke said, Carson Wentz, if he doesn't get injured, he's the MVP that year. But I think over the next few years, you see, like Luke said, Carson Wentz solidifies himself as a top 5 quarterback. So I think some quarterbacks may potentially slip down. But if he does what he does that year that the Eagles won the Super Bowl and plays like he did last year, where he had a bunch of undrafted free agents around him, if he's able to, like, if the support cast they've put around him this year are able to play to just a higher level than what was out there for him last year, I think he's a top 5 quarterback, and he solidifies himself as one of the best quarterbacks in the league.
Yeah, definitely. I think everything about him is absolutely fantastic. He can definitely break into that top 5 in the next few years. You've already said to both of you that definitely would have won the MVP that first year. But last year, like you said, it's almost as if he walked out onto the street and he pointed at 3 people and he said, "Yeah, my new receivers," and he took them to the playoffs.
Well, that's the thing. Like
that team, when you actually look at that Philadelphia team last year, they had like 4th-string cornerbacks starting. They had a sort of wide receiver converted from a quarterback in college, catching game-winning touchdowns. It was just crazy when you think about it. They've obviously got players like Wentz and Cox, and they've got a lot of good, solid players, but there was some awful players on that team, and the fact that he was able to take them to the playoffs just says it all about Carson Wentz.
Oh yeah, that's the thing. Like, absolutely decimated last year for injuries. I think one of the things that gets lost is that he has been lucky that he's always had a very good offensive line. Like he's had he's probably always had a top 5 unit, apart from his first year in the league, probably wasn't. But he's got Lane Johnson at right tackle, who potentially is the best right tackle in the league. I know Brandon Brooks is injured this year, so he's right guard, but they brought back Jason Peters to play right guard, which, if that works out, he's been one of the best left tackles over the past 10, 15 years. So if he comes back and plays to just somewhat level that he's been playing at over those years, then that's not a bad backup plan to have at right guard. Got one of the best centres in the league. And then hopefully, like the rookie that they drafted a couple of years ago, to play left tackle can show up. And then at left guard, they've got Isaac Solomeo, who's a decent starting level guard. So they've still got one of the best lines in the league. So he's hopefully can stay upright, stay healthy, which he did sort of last year, and kick on with some actually recognisable receivers.
Yeah.
Or it could all just be a smokescreen and Jalen Hurts is the future.
That is.
There is no
just so
way.
everyone knows, Jalen Hurts is number 5 on my list.
There is no way that Jalen Hurts takes over from Carson Wentz.
Nah, he's been brought in to be a backup quarterback, but who can potentially give them something else. And basically, when the Eagles are in a 4th and 1 situation, because Doug Peterson likes to go for it, and he knows he's doing a quarterback sneak because he does it a lot, is he can put Jalen Hurts in there to do that, to protect Carson Wentz from getting injured. And it's smart. Like, oh no, yeah, we're gonna have to sort a bet out for it. How many snaps he takes in the year.
I mean, I'd put it on how many touchdowns he scores. I think that he's going to get snaps no matter what.
None.
No
touchdowns. Limited snaps. Barely see him. No one will know what number he wears. He'll just carry that clipboard.
But I bet Chris already knows what number he wears, so...
Come on, Chris.
I'm not quite sure.
Oh, there we go.
I feel it might be 8.
That's a weird number. Horrible QB number.
I'm not sure though.
Name a good QB that wore 8.
Marcus Mariota.
Nope, not having it.
Lamar Jackson.
Does he wear 8? Oh, shit, yeah. All right. Well, he's only had a year. He might
He's
not
wearing number 2.
He might not even be on my list. Maybe he's not on my list, so we'll find out.
He's wearing number 2, Jalen Hurts.
Yeah, because he's my second overall quarterback on my list.
And the moment we've been waiting 5 weeks for. The top 5 QBs in the NFL.
Just great minds, I think. Like,
Are they the only 5 with the same on?
No, I'm sure there's one quarterback who's like further down the list that were exactly the same.
Justin Herbert and these 5. What a group.
Number 5. I mean, what he did last year was something special, wasn't it? He was probably the perfect quarterback for that Ravens team because they wanted to run the ball. But I didn't really think they thought that they were going to run the ball with the quarterback as much as they did. Picking up over 1,000 yards just on his feet on his own, and he's running it in for touchdowns himself. What he did last year was special, and it's just whether he can continue to do that year on and year out. Like Michael Vick was able to do it year on and year out, and then obviously, went to prison and then came back out of prison and then was then able to then recreate it again. So whether Jackson can do it consistently, he'll always be compared to Michael Vick because of a similar playing style. And I do hope he can continue and be successful in the way that he plays because he's so much fun to watch and he makes that Ravens team so much fun to watch. And he's got a perfect cast around him. He's got a great coach. They've got a great defense. They've got a very good line as well, and they've got big tight ends who can catch and who can block, which is sort of perfect for his sort of style. And then he's got speed on the outside, so he could be consistently someone who's in these top 5 lists, if not a bit higher. If he continues to play like he did last year, then he moves higher up. It's just whether he can consistently do that, and I hope he can.
Yeah, they really built that offense around him last year. Honed in on all his skills, and obviously he had 3 perfect passer rating games, and everyone will always remember the spin move against the Bengals being his MVP moment.
Well, that's the thing. I think if you just look at his throwing ability, then he's not a top 5 quarterback. But when you factor into account what he, like you said, his MVP moment was done on the ground, and for a quarterback, you'd prefer your MVP moment to be a throw that you make like in an absolute clutch moment. But that's not who he sort of is. Like what makes him so dangerous is the fact that you've got to defend the run at all times, which opens up the outside, which makes Baltimore such a dangerous team. And I think his throwing will improve, and I just hope that he doesn't get injured, and then that affects his style of play. Because obviously that's a worry to have if you're a running quarterback, that you get an injury and then that then affects that side of your game. So hopefully that doesn't happen.
I mean, in terms of him running, I always feel like he's a runner, but he's a smart runner. You always seem to have different types. You've got people like Wentz who will stick his head in a hole because he wants to get a first down, or you get people like Jackson who you sort of feel like he'll slide and accept that he's more important. Not saying that Wentz is wrong, it's just a different sort of mindset that they have. And Jackson always seems to take a little pause, and he is so sort of electric with his feet and his ability to move and make people miss. But I do think he always protects himself well, which will help him further along in his career. But going back to his throwing, I think, although I do agree that as a thrower of the football, he isn't the top 5 quarterback, it was his throwing that has elevated him this high. Because without his improvement in that part of his game this year, he wouldn't have won the MVP. Because if you think back to the year before, they played the Chargers in a playoff game. I actually watched it a couple of days ago. And he just couldn't throw the ball. He couldn't throw the ball all that year. And I don't mean he couldn't throw the ball. He wasn't throwing the ball well. He was just there to run. Flacco was coming in. Flacco was going out. They decided in the off-season that it was Lamar Jackson's team, and they worked on it. And by the looks of it, he worked on it, worked on his throwing, and he has still got ways to go. He's not got Patrick Mahomes' arm. He can't make all the throws like him. But like Ben said, he got 3 games of perfect passer rating. So he's definitely going in the right direction with that. And having the ability to throw the ball as well as he could and run the ball, he could be better than Patrick Mahomes, which is a huge show.
That's the thing. Like, I think you hit the nail on the head there, where you said that his throwing improved, and that's why he's seen such a jump. If his throwing doesn't improve, like if his throwing hadn't have improved, then he'd be in those sort of 20s numbers. But his throwing did improve, and it made him such a dangerous quarterback, and it just all sort of came together. And it was unfortunate that obviously, like, it didn't happen for them in the playoffs, but that doesn't mean that it's not going to happen for them for years to come, because they're set up at the moment to be a contender like Baltimore pretty much always are, but with a quarterback that can just win you games on his own. Where they've not, obviously they had Flacco, and that year they won the Super Bowl. Flacco played great for them, but since then, they've never really had that quarterback that can just win games on their own for them. There's not many quarterbacks in the league that can do that, and I think all of these top 5 quarterbacks that are in this list, and some of the others a bit lower down, can win you games just on their own.
Yeah, obviously, 2 of his great passing games were against sort of the Bengals and the Dolphins. Not exactly the best teams, but obviously you still can't just go out there and throw the ball around wherever you want without.
Yeah, there's still NFL starting corners, still NFL safe.
Yeah, exactly. I think he does. He has a massively high ceiling. We just have to see if he can crack that code for the playoffs.
He's got to go through Mahomes, which is going to be throughout his career. Every year, it's going to be like the next Manning, Brady, it feels like. And potentially, with the guy above in Watson, those 3 are going to take jumps out of each other in the playoffs. And unfortunately, every year, only one of them is going to be there.
Yeah, but all around fantastic. And I suppose year 3 might be another improvement in every aspect. I think I'd like to see his passing game improve, and maybe them take slightly less runs with the quarterback. But if they keep going the same way, I mean, they're still destroying teams and winning, so can't argue with it.
Can't argue with a winning football team.
Exactly.
Next up, both got Deshaun Watson at 4. For me, he's another one of your sort of Wentz type of quarterbacks who's just got it all, absolutely everything. I don't think there's any part of this game that he lacks. I think possibly the reason is he's not been successful is because of the team he's had. I know he's had DeAndre Hopkins, but Houston have. It feels like as long as he's been in the league, have always been a middle of the road sort of team. They make the playoffs, but they never sort of go far in the playoffs. And I think that does just come down to the sort of team they have. And unfortunately, if the Texans don't put some weapons around Watson and stop trading him away, we might be looking at Deshaun Watson in 7 or 8 years, looking at him the same way we were looking at Matt Stafford, a little bit disappointed that he hasn't had the same career. He doesn't have the same weapons, an O-line and defence that Jackson has. And unfortunately, that hinders him. But in terms of a quarterback, throwing ability, movement within the pocket, running the ball. He has got it everything.
Yeah, like completely agree again. Like obviously, we obviously see these quarterbacks very similar the way we've got them ranked, and I agree with Luke when he says he's very similar to Wentz. Like the very two similar sort of quarterbacks who will look to throw first, and then they can extend the play with the legs, and then they'll scramble if they need to, but they're never looking to run first. They're always looking to throw the ball downfield. Whereas Jackson will look to throw the ball, and then if it's not there on his first or second read, he'll then take off. Whereas these two will go to the third, fourth read, and then extend, and then if all else fails, look to take off. But like Luke said, he's got it all, where he can make all the throws, and he's unfortunate that they've just traded away one of the best receivers in the NFL. But at the same time, I think they came a little bit predictable on big plays. It was always, well, it's going to go to DeAndre Hopkins, which probably like 7 times out of 10 he'd be fine with a double team. He'd still probably bring it down and complete the play for them. But no, it makes them a little bit more unpredictable on offense. But the fact that you've got rid of one of the best receivers in the NFL, it's a sort of catch-22 basis where they're no more unpredictable on offense, but they've traded away one of the best players in the league. So I just, like Luke said, I hope it doesn't happen to him what's happened to Stafford, where they end up one of the best receivers in the NFL leaves that team, and then they don't really build around him and never give him that great support cast. Hopefully they end up doing, and they become, because he's got everything to become and continue to be one of the best quarterbacks in the league. And it'd be a shame if he never got a Super Bowl run, because the level of talent that he actually has, he deserves to be on a team that puts it all together.
Yeah, I suppose we'll see. It's a fantastic quarterback, and he's sort of took over since he came into the league. You were always hearing, if it's not every week, it's every other week, that Deshaun Watson's done something else amazing. But his contract in Houston ends in 2 years' time, and he might, if they don't start building around him, then he might just say, he might try and hold out and see where he can get some money.
It's annoying when you look back at the Hopkins trade, because, like Chris was saying, it makes them less predictable, and that's great. But they just got such a poor return for him that it just feels a little bit disappointing. I mean, the year before that, I think it was the year before, Ben, you'll know, they went and got Laramie Tunsil, and I believe he's the highest paid left tackle at the moment in football. And it looked like the Texans were going after weapons and obviously protection for Watson, but then the year later they trade away like arguably a top 3 wide receiver in the league, which for a quarterback must be a killer.
It just makes no sense that that's what they got for Hopkins, and then the Bills trade away so much for Diggs, and Hopkins is a better receiver than Diggs. Obviously, he's older, and I suppose the contract sort of comes into play. Yeah, they got David Johnson, but David Johnson isn't David Johnson for the first couple of years of his career. He hardly played over the past 2 years. There's the reason for that. But it's one of them, like, you just don't really know sort of what you're going to get from the Texans this year. What you probably do know that you're going to get is you're going to get Deshaun Watson probably running around for his life at some point, spinning away from someone as he's getting tackled, and then throwing a touchdown like he did so many times last year.
Yeah, I think one of the big problems with the Texans is having the coach also be the GM and be in charge of players. If the coach feels that someone isn't performing to the standard that he wants him to, then he can, or he likes another player a little bit better, then he can just trade someone away. So, there's no one overseeing his actions, which is a problem.
Yeah, I only think one coach is worthy of coach / GM, and that is Belichick. I don't think any other coach in the NFL is worthy of having both of those jobs. Yeah,
but Watson's great, and if you want anything to prove it, then just go look at the playoffs versus the Bills this past year. He managed to wiggle them into the next round of the playoffs somehow.
And I mean, they were up big against the Chiefs as well.
If you just watch that,
if Mahomes does what Mahomes does, then potentially they're going a step further in the playoffs.
Yeah, fantastic. Obviously, again, same, moving up another step.
Yeah, so next up, we both got Aaron Rodgers. So, what can you say about him? He's been so good for so many years. And then he was probably he probably had a little bit of a down year, probably the last 2 years, but he's still that good that he makes it at number 3 on both our lists, because there's not many other people in the world who can actually do what he can do. You just have to look back at some of the games that he's had and some of the throws he's made. I mean, even last year, I saw a clip of him the other day where I can't even remember who he was against, and it just shows the clip of him where he's sort of falling down. He throws the ball into the back of the end zone. It's absolutely perfectly placed, and then he's watching it back on the big screen, and I don't think even he can believe what he's just done. And he's done that so consistently for so many years. And where I've sort of knocked Breeze down and Brady down because I don't feel that they can still consistently perform at the level that they have done in previous years, I think Rodgers can. He's been unfortunate in previous years where he's had nothing around him. It sort of looks like they're getting a little bit more around him and sort of having a bit of a run game there as well. But at the same time, he's been absolutely done over by having a quarterback drafted in the first round when they could have took a skilled position for him. I don't think it's time for them to move on from him just yet. He's still got a lot left, and he can still win your games on his own. I think if you put a different quarterback on that Packers team last year, they're not the second overall seed in the NFC. They'd be potentially like an 8-8 sort of team, but he's that good that he elevates them to the second overall seed, and I think they could have another run again this year. I'd like to see him get another Super Bowl because he deserves more than just one. But unfortunately, that's all he's got, and I think people will always knock him down because he's only got one Super Bowl. But when you just look at his play and how good he's been over the years, he deserves to be talked about as one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time.
Yeah. Sorry, Luke, you can go. You've got something on the list. I'll wait my turn.
I just think the last couple of years, I agree with Chris. He has not taken a sort of backward step. Obviously, now he's still, obviously a top 3 in our eyes quarterback in the league. But sort of the emergence of Mahomes and him sort of taking a back step has meant he's dropped down. I think if we'd have done this list last year and probably every year for maybe the last 5, 6, 7, 8 years, Rodgers would have been number 1 for me, no questions asked. I wouldn't even have thought about it. He'd have been put in at number 1. Obviously, Mahomes has come in and sort of taking the mantle away from him in my eyes. He's still a phenomenal quarterback. He can still make all the throws. He is getting a little bit up there in age. I was disappointed with the Green Bay Packers taking Love. Don't get me wrong, Love could be the next Aaron Rodgers for all I know, but it just seemed a bit of a shame when they've gone from being the second seed, and they weren't even really. It didn't feel like they were in that game against the Niners. They could have taken someone that could have helped them the year after to have another run at a Super Bowl, but unfortunately they went the QB route. But like I say, in terms of Rodgers, there's no weakness to his game. Some of the moments he's had over the last 10 years, when you think back, there's I think it was the playoff game against Dallas where he made that throw to Jared Cook on the sideline. That's one that sort of springs to mind. And I remember him just sort of talking about that 2-minute drive after the game and discussing it. And even then he just seemed so calm and like it was natural and it was always going to happen. And I can't remember who it was from Dallas who mentioned, I think it might have been Jerry Jones, was when Dallas scored, they all sort of turned around and was like, we've left too long on the clock for Aaron Rodgers. We've left him too much time. And they knew that Aaron Rodgers, you can't leave him any time on the clock because he's just too good and he will punish you.
Yeah. Obviously, I've watched a lot of Aaron Rodgers over his career. With I've got two Packers fans in my family, um, and he's still unbelievably talented. We talked about him once on last week's episode. Obviously, missing out on the Super Bowl in 2014, but he missed out last year, and he missed out 2016 when the Falcons went. He's always he has carried so many teams to the point of an NFC Championship game, so many Packers squads, and then it's sort of one thing that was out of his control went wrong, and he ends up in a bad place. Last year, I think in the second half, I think Rodgers really was trying. Even they were down and out in that San Francisco game, and I think Rodgers did actually. He really tried in that second half to get something going. Coming up short again, but he's a multiple time MVP. When he starts playing well, he plays really well. He can dance around and extend a play to 10, 14 seconds long, and it's unbelievable that he'll find someone. And he always plays with a chip on his shoulder, and I think that makes him better. I feel like this Love draft pick actually might help him with it, put another chip on his shoulder, and he might come out and surprise us all again next year.
Yeah, that could definitely go that way. I do agree with that point that it could be the sort of fire in his belly, the rocket up his ass, whatever you want to say, that sort of reignites that fire a little bit for him and makes him fight for that. Not that it will be a fight, but makes him sort of show this young rookie that he is still number one and it is still his team.
I think you could see a thing with Rodgers where he comes up and comes to his deal. He's like, "No, I'm not signing for you again. I'm moving somewhere else." And he then has one last run. And I think something that'd be absolutely perfect for him is if that happens over the next 1-2 years and he ends up going to, say, the 49ers and he gets himself with Carl Shanahan like such a good OC and a good team around him, and he could have right, well, I'm just going to have one last run, get another Super Bowl, I'm a two-time Super Bowl champ, and then he's in that sort of bracket with Manning for the two-time Super Bowl champ, and solidifies himself as one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time.
Obviously, I love it too. I feel like that 49ers, if he went there, it's fantastic. It's a dream come true for Aaron Rodgers. He finally gets to go to his childhood team and where he should have gone in the draft if it wasn't for them picking Alex Smith that year. And I feel like that's sort of he gets to be a bit more creative with a coach that finally understands his offense.
So number 2, we've got both of us, Russell Wilson. I think over the last few years, I think people have started to realise just how good he is. But maybe 4 or 5 years ago, they sort of disregarded him a little bit and he wasn't seen as good as he was. And don't get me wrong, he's improved over that time. But around the sort of Legion of Boom time, he was disregarded a little bit. It wasn't his team, it was their team, it was a defensive team, and he just played a part. Whereas when that all started to break down and those players started to leave, you start to see what Russell Wilson was really about. And as a Rams fan, I love Russell Wilson, but in terms of having to play him twice a year, it kills me because he's just a phenomenal quarterback and he can escape. You can have him in the clutches, you can have him tackled, it's looking like he's got a sack, and then he just moves and escapes and he throws a bomb down the field and he scores. There's the one against the Cardinals where he was running round, then throws it to Doug Baldwin on the sideline, they score. And for a while, it was like you can't even sort of fathom how he was able to do it and find him. But that's the type of player Russell Wilson is. He is the top of his game, and he is arguably. I mean, some people may argue he's better than Mahomes. I think Mahomes pips him, but he's in and around this number, and he will be probably for the rest of his career.
Yeah, I think he's unfortunate that he's not really got a very good offense around him. They seem to run the ball. Well, it's the fourth quarter. We're down by 10 points. Russell, we need you to basically put the ball in your hands now and win us the game. And he seems to be a quarterback who's always, when you're watching Red Zone and you see that Seattle are down in the fourth quarter by 10 points, and he then brings them back to within 3, and then he's got the ball on a last-minute drive. And when he's got the ball with less than 2 minutes in the game, you always think that you're going to have a chance of potentially winning the game. And like you said, he was a bit underrated at the start of his career because of the team he had around him then, the Legion of Boom team. And then now that all that's gone and it's just his team, they've never really put too much around him. Well, I'm hoping that they sort of do now that they've got DK Metcalf, and like you said, they've got Baldwin as well. So hopefully they can start to build more and more around Russell Wilson, of him throwing the ball rather than looking to be a run-first team. But he's got everything that you want, and yeah, he doesn't quite pip Patrick Mahomes for us both. But if Patrick Mahomes would have become a baseball player, then Russell Wilson's the number one quarterback in the NFL. He's just that good. And what he can do on a weekly basis, where you said like he runs around and then firing into the corner of the end zone, there's only really him, Mahomes, and probably Rodgers that can make those sort of throws. Obviously, like Watson and Jackson can both like run around, and Wentz as well can run around and extend the play. But just Wilson and Mahomes for me are just on that other level compared to all other quarterbacks at the minute.
Yeah, I'm very high on Russell Wilson, and I probably would put in an argument for him being over Mahomes, But again, Mahomes is a really great QB, but we'll get on to him. Wilson, I feel, wins so many games on his own, and he is that Seattle team. He's in the prime of his career, and he's highly accurate. Also, coming from a baseball background like Patrick Mahomes, which obviously helps. And then it helps in his run game. He knows when to slide and not take hits. He's someone who doesn't get injured, and he's going to be around for a long time, making crazy plays and great throws.
I do feel sorry for him a little bit, because I feel like when Rodgers has taken this sort of step back, I feel like Mahomes has turned up. So in my eyes, he's never had that year or 2 years of being the best quarterback in the league. And if Mahomes keeps carrying on the way he does, then I don't think he will. But I am a big fan of Russell Wilson. I'd say he's number 2 on both of our lists.
Yeah, I just hope he has that 1 year where he has like an MVP year, because every year he seems to be in the talk for it. But there's always someone who just has that little bit extra.
Yeah.
Like Jackson last year, Mahomes like the year before, and I think it's going to be between those 3, maybe Wentz for the next couple of years coming. It will be those guys who are vying for the MVP, and it's because those are the guys who can just do things on a football field that no one else can. And he should, like you say, it's just unfortunate that he's in the league at the same time as Patrick Mahomes, just for the same as all over 39 guys on this list. They're all sort of living in Patrick Mahomes' shadow, which sort of takes us seamlessly on to number 1, which is number 1 overall, Patrick Mahomes. Just got that $500 million deal, 99 overall on Madden, like everything about him. He is the face of the NFL at the minute, and rightfully so, because of what he's been able to do. in his first 3 years, because he didn't play in his first year. His first 3 years in the league is just it's ridiculous, basically, isn't it? Like that first year where he threw for 50 touchdowns, last year where he comes back from injury, and as soon as he comes back, he just changes that team completely. Obviously, got the Super Bowl last year. I mean, some people will always say that, oh, well, he's got such a good team around him, such talented receivers around him, but he elevates those receivers to be what they are. Like, Tyreek Hill isn't as good as he is if he's not got Patrick Mahomes, who's able to put that ball 50 yards downfield in the air on the absolute money. If he's got Drew Brees throwing him the ball, for instance, you can't get out of Tyreek Hill what you would want, because Tyreek Hill is a speedster who can stretch the field, and Mahomes is the perfect quarterback for him. And there's not much you can really say. That he's not really got any flaws to his game. He can run and extend the play if he needs to, like you saw against the Titans in the playoffs, where he sets off and he scores like a 40-yard touchdown with his legs. He's just everything that you would want in a quarterback, and the Chiefs are set now for the next 10 years.
Yeah, I think unfortunately for the rest of the NFL, you've got to deal with Patrick Mahomes every year for, like you said, 10, maybe even 15 years. And watching Patrick Mahomes, don't get me wrong, I've not been watching the NFL for my entire life, but I've been watching it for long enough, and I've seen him do things that I've never seen anyone else do, and I've never seen clips of anyone else do, and he just seems like he's on that next level. And maybe we'll find that QBs are elevated and they're getting better, and the next few guys that start coming in start taking that step, and we find there's another level above. But I can't see it. I just feel like Mahomes is going to be the number one for some time, and I think we could be looking at potentially at the end of his career the greatest ever quarterback. I know that's a big shout, but I just think he is that good.
That's the thing. He's just got to consistently do it now, and if you just look at his first couple of seasons, if he can just do over the next 10, 15 years to not even to that level, even just 90% of that, then I think he is the greatest quarterback of all time, because what he's done in those first years is just absolutely ridiculous. No one else has been able to do that. And some of the throws he makes, like his no-look throws. There was a video online today of him throwing it round the back of him, backhanded. It's just like, if he does that in a game, it's just how do you defend him? You can't. He's like there's not enough words to describe him as to how good he actually is.
Yeah, he's definitely the only quarterback that could get that deal. No one, I don't think there's anyone else that I'd pay that money to. He came into the league and he effortlessly threw 50 touchdowns in his first year. That's something that Tom Brady only did when he had Randy Moss. It's not something that you can just go and do. He took a slight step back on the amount of touchdowns, but I think he massively improved last year in his reading of the game and the way he actually played.
Yeah, I think when it's all said and done, I think Patrick Mahomes is going to have all these records, most touchdowns in a year, highest passer rating over a career, most yards in a year. He is, like you say, he is just that good. I think we could probably spend the next half an hour all pouring over how good Patrick Mahomes is, to be honest.
Yeah, I think he's definitely going to change the game. And you said that QBs are improving. Obviously, the next sort of big QB coming out of college is Trevor Lawrence next year. He looks set to sort of be another great quarterback. But I honestly think that Patrick Mahomes does things that even he couldn't do. And people talk about Trevor Lawrence as being the next sort of Peyton Manning and this great QB that will take over the league.
I think in a few years' time, it'll be who's going to be the next Patrick Mahomes, and that'll be how everyone refers to the QB level. That is the benchmark, and I think that's just the case.
Well, we seem to have used up our time limits. So that'll be it for this time. You're both going to be joining us for the quiz next time round.
I've got to defend my title, haven't I?
You've got your camera this time as well.
Yeah, I've got my camera submitted, so I'll have to hold my hands up throughout.
Thanks everyone for watching. We'll see you later.
Cheers.
Cheers, guys.
Hey everyone, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please remember to like and subscribe for more content from us. And check out all of our social media links down in the description: Spotify, Facebook, Twitter and Instagram. Remember to watch all the other content on The Bandits Show. And see you next time.